that this is the integral part of genome editing. Then we have covered the zinc finger nucleases, which is coming from the transcription factor, and that was linked to FOC1 catalytic sites. Now we are going to see talons, because talon also comes from a plant system, and this is also a transcription factor. So basically the name stands for transcription activator like effectors. So what I have covered in last lecture was that what is the relationship between a talon and for example pathogen. So this is a Xanthomonas pathogen, gram negative bacteria, which is a plant pathogen, and there are a lot of different pathovars of Xanthomonas, and it infects various kinds of plants through your mesophyll, and it makes microcolonies, and once it infects the plant, it makes this black spots. And why it is necessary, and what is the significance of your effector immunity, and how plants resist this kind of infection, that also we have covered. So what basically we saw that there was some kind of gene to gene hypothesis that was proposed, and from this gene hypothesis what we can see that there is an avirulence gene present in the pathogen, for example in our case Xanthomonas, and in plant we have resistance gene, for example. So when these two things are present in the system, then only your plant is resistant. Okay. And slowly people actually found out that the system works to fend against your pathogenic system. That means if you have a resistant gene which is present inside the cytoplasm, and if you have a pathogenic gene, that is a virulence gene, which is not secretory in nature, but it directly transfer its protein or effector proteins via type 3 secretion system into the cytoplasm. Once it gets into the plant cytoplasm, it actually binds with your resistance gene. So once it binds, then it nullifies the effect of effector proteins. Basically, it nullifies only in the plant system which has the resistance gene, but not in the plant which does not have resistance gene. That means this effector proteins which is infected or injected into the plant, they are causing some kind of in evading this kind of immunity system from the plant. That you remember this, we talked about pattern triggered immunity. In normal case, plant has some kind of system to recognize all the infection coming from different kind of pathogens. But in case of evading this kind of immunity, this Xanthomonas or the same kind of organism has evolved to directly inject its material into the plant so that immunity is not created against them, and only plant containing resistant gene will be resistance against this effector gene. So there is a gene to gene relationship was proposed. So we have seen this, and what we were talking about in last lecture, that the professor Robert Stahl in University of Florida, he uh, created a plant with having resistance gene, that means BS3, and he infected that with AVR BS3 avirulent gene, and that gave him the resistant plant. So or other plants which contain other kind of resistant gene was not resistant, and by doing so he was able to take out the sequence. And this is what I have shown here, that this is the disease symptom what you see as a water soaked lesion, and if it is resistance, then it is a complete plant sorry a local plant death in the local area. So only this area where the infection takes place, this area is totally uh, empty, or it is to plant cell death which is taking place in this case. So then they isolated this AVR gene, avirulent gene, and then according to you can say that what they will do, they will just mutate this thing and then try to find out whether it is necessary, and what are the promoter region, what are the other necessary region. So initial sequencing, this is the ORF, and they figured out what is the important ORF, and in initial sequencing assays, they found that there was lot of repeats. That means same kind of proteins were generated. I marked here in the line. So for example, underlined region here, LTP, EQ, VV. So here also LTP, Q, VV up to this area. So here, this is the last LP2Q. This was repeated number and number of times. Even the deletion mutants they generated, and they sent it for sequencing. After sequencing also, they found that one deletion also had the same protein, other also had the same protein, and they were able to create this kind of figure where they say that one repeat is starting from one base pair to 102 base pair. That gives you around 34 amino acid, and they are all conserved. That means this points mean they are exactly similar in all the repeats. So all these repeats were very similar. Only the area which I have marked here in yellow, this area was little bit different from other repeats, and that is not conserved in this area. But all other things are very much conserved in from one repeat to another repeat. Another important feature here, which you can see in repeat number 18, it was only conserved until this, only half part was significantly similar to other repeats, but in the end, if you see from here to here, this was variant. So this was not exactly similar to the other repeat. So the first publication, they actually took these only this sequencing, and they published it saying that what is the significance of this repeats are not known in the current moment, but looking at its repeat, it is very much possible that it is behaving an important subject in some kind of essay. So this was their comment, and slowly people started working on these kind of repeats. So what they did next, that there was several kind of ORF region was generated. That means whether it is producing from the right direction or from the left direction. So in plant system, they majorly have something called GUS system. These days we have also GFP and other kind of reporter system, but earlier prominently people used GUS system, which is glucuronidase based, and upon XGAL substrate, it gives you a blue color. So this kind of reporter systems were created where you have GUS in your reporter gene, and upstream of that you have promoter sequences. For example, if you believe your promoter region are from 1 to 700, then you take out these sequences and you link it with your GUS reporter system. So this is your reporter system, and GUS will give you a blue color, and this blue color indicates that your gene of interest is expressed. That means you have some kind of promoter in this region, which is acting like proteins are coming, transcription factors are coming and binding to this region. It is bringing your RNA polymerase. RNA polymerase will give you the RNA, and then you have secretion of or expression of proteins, and then you have blue color. So blue color signifies that you have expression of protein. That means you have intact promoter sequence here. So slowly they started deleting the promoter sequence, because from 700 base pair, if they deleted around 200 base pair here, so still they were able to find that GUS was able to produce. That means still your promoter sequence should be within this region. So if you delete till here, and if you delete more than like up to here 110 base pair, um, then the activity was gone. So here you do not have any blue color. So white color signifies that you have lost your promoter sequences. And similarly, they did from the opposite end, from left side, and they were not able to get. So from this assays, they were prominently able to say that your ORF is from the left to right section, and then you have significant area that is used as a promoter. So this was found, and later the protein expression also gave them 122 kilodalton protein. As you can see here, this is the control where they have no expression, and the deletion mutants of these proteins gave them very small proteins. So from these experiments, they were able to say that this protein is expressed, and Now the prominent features what they got was the repeated domain, right? So what they took here, that AVR-BS3 was the first one to be recognized. AVR-BS3 was the first one to be recognized, and then based on the homology, they searched other species. For example, AVR XA7, then AVR XA5. All these were homologs coming from rice species. So that is why they have XA for their scientific name. So they also showed a very similar kind of pattern, that this is consistent of 102 base pair, giving rise to 34 amino acid. And again you have one region which is hypervariable region. So this was named as a variable region or variable region. So based on the homology, then they found out the significance, and also based on what you say, this restriction enzymes. So they, when they digested this at one particular position, so they were able to get a very repeated pattern. For example, this. So this signifies that all these avirulence gene has some kind of repeat of similar base pair, that is similar 102 base pair, and the number, length, and repeats actually vary from one species to another species. As you can see here, these are much more repeats are present here. Here there are even longer repeats are present. I think 33.5 repeats are present here, and in AVR-BS3 there was 17.5 that was found to be present. So similarly, they were able to conclude that these repeated sequences are the characteristic of this avirulence gene. Now, based on the homology as well as from AVR-BS3, they were able to find the homology that only in the sequences, for example, 12th and 13th residue. This is their 12th amino acid residue and the 13th amino acid residue. See this prominent changes. All other amino acids were almost similar, but only at this residue you have variable region. We'll come to it. So now you can predict that what kind of assays they are doing. So this is the domain structure of AVR-BS3 protein. So you have some kind of N-terminal domain, then what you have C-terminal domain, and in between. So this is the central repeats. You have these repeat sequences. So you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 up to 17, and the last one is 0.5 because only half of the portion was conserved, repeated similar to the other repeats, and this is why it is said as a so like other FOC1 enzyme or zinc finger nuclease enzyme or zinc finger transcription factors. So how they actually noted that what is the significance of these structures. So obviously what they will do several kind of point mutation or deletion mutants. So once they do deletion mutants, they were able to find out that the sequence of the repeats are important. The domains, although they are not similar domains, it changes from one repeat to another repeat, but the order, the significance actually demonstrate the hypersensitivity effects. So as soon as you delete this domains from example here to here, that means this kind of construct is not giving you anymore any hypersensitive response. And this response, how you are able to see, if you transfect it into the plant leaf, or then if you do not see any local cell death where you have injected this construct, then you do not see any effect of this. So that means there is no local plant death which is possible in this case. Similarly, delta repeat 9, it also did not give any hypersensitive effect. Whereas in this case, repeat 16, when they deleted 11 to 14 domain, they were able to get new kind of resistance, activity. That means it is recognizing some new R gene. in the plant. And later it was found that our gene was something similar to BS3E. This was very much a homologue of BS3, and that is why this new recognition was later found out because of this. It is not important for your exam, but this kind of experiment they did. What they started with, they started deleting this repeats and then finding out whether it is important for hypersensitive response or not. So this was one thing. And one, you have to remember that when this was isolated 30 years ago, it was not known whether this is important, or what kind of sequences it will recognize, or how it is going to behave. So what you are seeing here is the complete structure of your avirulence gene. So what you have seen so far is your repeats. So for example, these are the central repeats what we have talked about. So in AVR gene there is 17.5 repeats, whereas in number of other cases or other avirulence gene, you can find that it depends or differ from 1.5 to 33.5 repeats, or maybe in other cases different number has been found. And also what we have seen so far, each repeat is made up of 102 base pair, and this means you have 34 amino acid here. But in other cases it has also been found that these number, that means instead of 102, other in other avalance it has been found that there are examples of containing 105 base pair, which gives them 35 amino acid, and so differently. So different avirulence gene had different kinds of repeats, and this repeats, each repeats will have at a 12th and 13th position, you have some hypervariable regions. So this hypervariable regions are very, very important within one repeat, and we will come to it later. Okay, so far what we have seen, I will make a summary of it. What we have seen so far in Talon, that Xanthomonas secretes this effector through transcription translocation 3s kind of system, and this system is very much conserved from bacteria because it injects it directly into the plant system. Then after injection, we know that there are many different kinds of effector, of which tail is the largest family. That means transcription activators of plant gene. So we have also seen gene to gene relationship. That means if you have avirulent genes against BS3, then BS3 kind of resistant protein should be there in the plant as a resistant gene. So people isolated it and then characterized this avirulent gene. Then based on the homology, because once you know that one protein or one whole repeats are looking like that, you can take some kind of primers from that and look for the another plant whether you are getting any amplification from the other genes also. So based on the homology, people found out lot of different homologs. For example, AVR X10, the 7, 5 and others in other cases. And in all these cases, 12th and 13th amino acid was always found to be hypervariable region. That means it did not match with one repeat to another repeat. It varied from one to another repeats. So this is what we have seen so far. And based on the mutational assays of the repeats, because if you have to find out some, functional assays, so the strategy in normal strategy is either you mutate that, or you swap this kind of base pair with another base pair and see whether you are getting the similar effectiveness, or you have different or mutated effectiveness. So in this case, since it was causing hypersensitive response, or hyper variable response, so they checked with the mutational assays and deletion assays that the repeats order was important, number of repeats, order and length was important for its sequence specificity. We will come to it later. So, so far we have seen this much in the repeat sequences, because that is the prominent area which are in the center, and this is the longest area in that kind of gene. Now, if you see the structure closely, you can see that there are nuclear localization signal as well as some kind of transcriptional activation domain. That means acidic activation domain, AAD, is also known for this region. So here they have shown you only two NLS sequences, but in general what they uh, found in the AVR gene, they had basically three NLS sequence. So all these three sequences, and they wanted to check what is the role of this nuclear localization signal and how this AVD actually behaves. So this we are talking about like 30 years back. So that time it was not known that how these proteins are behaving. So first instance, if you see some kind of nuclear localization signal, the first imagination come, let's check the localization signal, whether this protein is present in the species, in the nucleus, or in the cytoplasm. So they first checked within the xanthomonas. So this is imaginary xanthomonas and this is their nucleoid sequence. And what was surprising to them, that even after having nuclear localization signal, the protein was basically present in the cytoplasm. So if you can imagine, this is the protein. So they saw some kind of signal is present in the cytoplasm. So that means this nuclear localization signal is not causing any localization in the nucleus, especially within the Xanthomonas species. So next they what they found, that these NLS was very much similar to animal system, because from its characteristic or from database they were able to find that is a close relationship with the an animal system or plant system, and then they were able to carry out some kind of mutation. For example, these are the three NLS sequences in the C terminus. 1, 2, and 3 is defined here, and like repeat sequences, they deleted it. So here what they did in this experiment, they first created Gus reporter system. So what you can imagine, you can have one NLS at the C terminus, you have Gus system, and this is your one kind of NLS where you have 1, 2, and 3, all three NLS sequences present, and you have some kind of control where you have just Gus without any NLS. So there is no NLS, nuclear localization signal. So this is what they see without NLS. What they did in this experiment, what you're seeing here, they use this kind of reporter system and they bombarded it on the onion epidermal tissues. So when they did this kind of experiment, there is a transient expression of the reporter gene fusion. And what you see here is the total expression of Gus here in the cytoplasm, everywhere in the epidermal. So when they used this now, second reporter system, and bombarded it on the onion epidermal tissue, what you see is particularly uh, sequence or particularly expression of Gus only in the nucleus region. And this is the uh, higher magnification. So what you see here is your total expression. That means it is localized in the nucleus of all transformed cell. So from there also they started saying that it has to have some role in the plant system. So what they did lot of mutational studies on this nuclear localization signal, and they generated different mutant proteins. What you see here is the expression of all mutant proteins. I will not go in detail here because you will come to know what is M12, what is 23, and what are all this after I explain next pictures. So what you have here is NLS. As you can see here, this is NLS 1, 2, and 3. So these are the specific sequences. The prominent NLS where lysine was first mutated into threonine, as you can see here. So they first started doing individual, mutant. For example, only NLS 1 where K was mutated to T. Then in individual mutant for M2 where NLS2 lysine was mutated to threonine, and in LS3 again lysine was mutated to threonine. And in second case, this is the prominent second amino acid which is important. So this was also mutated into alanine. In this case, serine was mutated to alanine, and in this case, proline was mutated to alanine here. And after mutating individual, amino acid, they checked the efficiency in hyperactivity response. So what you see here, see all of this mutant behaved similar like wild type. So this is the wild type. It gives you hypersensitive response. So as you can see here, so mutation did not cause any drastic effect compared to your wild type. So this behaved exactly like hypersensitive response. That means hypersensitive response was not, lost. So this is intact here. That means there is no, no drastic effect of this mutation, individual mutation. Then they started doing combination of mutation where they used NLS1 mutant together with NLS2 mutant. Here they took NLS1 mutant together with NLS3 mutant, and here they took 2 and 3, and here they took all three mutant 1, 2 and 3, and then they checked again that how hypersensitive response was behaving. So in this case, what you can see here, prominently mutating 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 actually lost the hypersensitive response, or very minimal activity was being there, whereas mutating either 1 2 or 1 3 did not cause any effect. That means the intactness of hypersensitive response was there. So it behaved exactly like your wild type example. So only that means you have some kind of responsibility in the NLS2 and NLS3 sequences. So this was the outcome from here, and further they moved this experiment further. What they did in this experiment, they started deleting these kind of amino acid in between, amino acid between your NLS1 or 2, or between NLS2 3 and NLS1 and 3. So knowing to know that whether these in between amino acid is also important in hypersensitive response. So they deleted 46, 37 and 83 amino acid from these sequences, and then they checked the response. So here again, if you delete NLS sequences 1 and 2, between 1 and 2, that means 46 amino acids here, if you delete this, then you do not see any difference between your hypersensitive response is intact, behave like the wild type. Then if you delete sequences from NLS 2 and 3 or between 1 and 3, then the activity is completely gone. So here you do not see, and in fact they also check the localization effect. So in most of the cases it was not, wherever the activity was not there, so there they see also this is not localized anymore in the nucleus, is not there. So this kind of they did. Then the majority is whether this is important and whether you can rescue this kind of effects. So for rescue, what you see here, so you have SV40 NLS sequence. So what they did, SV40 is a virus, and it also has some kind of nuclear localization signals, right? So they took some kind, they took this whole amino acid which is responsible for nuclear localization from NLS SV40 NLS, and replaced it here in place of this position. For example, delta 13, which upon deletion of 83 amino acid, which resulted in complete loss here, as you can see, and then they replaced it with the SV40 signal. Then in second case, they also, where they use delta 2 between 2 3, they had replaced 37 amino acid from the SV40 signals. And in this case, delta 13 VS. So just to say that if it is not like replacing any NLS sequence will rescue the effect, what they did here, they inserted the amino acid but in the opposite orientation. So what they have here is insertion of same amino acid but in the opposite orientation. So instead of INV, they have written on the different kind of amino acid that will produce. Okay, so Then they checked whether this is able to rescue the effect. So in both the cases which gave delta 1,3, which gave very drastic effect here, there is no HR activity, and delta 2,3, which does not give any HR activity. So here, upon insertion of SV40 sequences of 83 amino acid, it partly complemented the effect, and here also in delta 2,3, they partly complemented the effect here. Right. Whereas in this case, where delta 1,3, where the opposite signals were inserted, which did not complemented the effect. So this proves that both NLS, especially especially 2 and 3 NLS is important, and the prominent function of this NLS is to take the protein inside the nuclear signals, or target the protein into the nucleus. So this is the main thing, and because this was also rescued by SV40, and the NLS of an SV40 also behaves in a similar manner, where it is taking the protein into the nucleus region, and then you have reversion of hypersensitive response. Is this clear so far? Any question? Okay. So moving further, so this we have talked about our NLS system. So next we wanted to see this acidic transcriptional activation domain. Again, they did similar kind of experiment. They had various what you say, this hydrophobic residues in this sequences, especially 1064 to the sequences where underlying regions are there, right? These are hydrophobic sequences, and converting these from BS3 or XA10, they were able to see that these are the acidic domains, and these are important for its activity. So what they did, they generated some kind of strains, and these are the proteins, or from different sources. For example, this is from herpes viral protein 16, and this is domain 1, this is domain 2, also had acidic domain and hydrophobic amino acids. So as you can see here, and this is from yeast system P53 gal4. So all different variants, they have taken it, and they wanted to swap it from the acidic region of AVR BSS3. So what was their strategy? So here they generated different kind of strains, where they took repeat sequences and then flanking regions, and they created plasmids where they had different this last acidic domains. So what you have here is one kind of plasmid with XA. So basically, we have already seen this is avirulent genes against XA10, and plant containing XA10 effector will be resistant. Whereas if you mutate this sequence 1064, so basically this is, if you mutate this sequences, so what you get here is the susceptibility. That means this plant is not resistant anymore. Similarly, they did this kind of assay for BS3, which is resistant in this case when the plant is having this BS3R gene, and it becomes susceptible upon deleting the sequence. And similarly for XVR7, which is resistance when it has a effector and becomes susceptible upon this mutation. So this kind of experiment proved that this for hyper activity, hypersensitive reactions. So what is necessary? You have repeats which are important. First thing is repeat sequences, order and length is important. Then second, what is important is your NLS sequences are important. And third, from this experiment, they said that acidic activation domain is also important, and they rescued the effect of this thing. So for example, this is the picture how they got the resistance. So this is the resistant gene, and this is the susceptibility response. So the proteins they showed here, this is the example in lane 2 is a control. So they did some kind of rescue experiment. So where the genes which were mutated here, for example, plasmid ZW17 containing this mutation, when they incubated or they swapped this region with your VP16 domain 1, it was able to rescue the effect of control sequences. So with this swapping, this kind of experiment is called swapping experiment. So they showed that both NLS as well as this acidic domains were important for the effectivity. So in general, you have these features in your avirulence gene. So you have repeats, you have NLS, you have acidic domain. And not only, and mutational and swapping studies showed that both are critical for this activity. And activity means your hypersensitive response. Now, apart from these domains, you have one critical also factor which was found in sequencing, that you have left and right repeats, inverted repeats. So this is the sequence of right repeats, and this is the sequence of left repeat as barred in the boxes. And this is exactly of 62 base pair. So by showing this, so you can imagine in case of you have studied Agrobacterium tumefaciens gene, right? So you have some kind of similar gene, and this has been inverted repeats is present here and inverted repeat is present here. So this is of 62 base pair, this is of 62 base pair. Then in between you have central repeats, then you have N-terminus domain, C-terminus domain, and in C-terminus domain you have NLS as well as you have acidic domain. So you can imagine with this 62 base repeats, what is happening, that this can actually transfer your plasmid from one species to another species. So this is basically horizontal gene transfer, is horizontal gene transfer. So this is exactly like this. So now coming to the summary of what we have talked about, especially talon or avirulence gene so far, that it has repeats, and this repeats can vary from 1.5 to 33.5 times. The base pair can be 102 or maybe 105, and from 34 to 35 amino acid, and basically 12th and 13th contains hypervariable region. In the C terminus, they have three nuclear localization signals, of which second and third is critical, and this was proved based on the experiment. And what you have in the C terminal is acidic activation domain. It is also important for AVR-BS3 activity. And left and right inverted repeat, which is important for the transfer of the gene. Now, it was found that N-terminals has this translocation signal. We have seen that it enters from the N-terminal signal, which directly allows into the entry into the cell wall. So that is not much to study in this case. So what was shown? So far we have seen that it enters into the plant, and what are the features of avirulent gene, right? The structural features we have already seen. So what is the importance of repeats? What is the importance of nuclear localization signal, acidic domain, and translocation domain? Now, apart from that, it was found that when it enters into the cells, now we have seen the structure. So now let's see if this is the plant cell and the protein is entering into the cell. So what is the function of this protein into the cell? So it has been found that once it enters into the cell, it actually gives upregulation of some kind of proteins. So these proteins were basically either auxin or alpha expansin. So these kind of proteins like expansin or exin, they help the cells to, control the cell enlargement, basically mesophils and other things. So basically it is using the protein into its own benefit. That means it will infect more, and it actually upregulated those kind of genes. Especially it was found that UPA box was the direct targets of AVR BS3 repeats. So if you see that this is the transcription factor, it enters into the plant cell wall, and since it has the NLS sequence, it will go into the nucleus, and inside the nucleus, if there are genes, it will bind somewhere in the gene, and then it will help in the regulation of RNA production and upregulation of some kind of genes. So basically, a lot of genes were found to be upregulated upon entering of a transcription factor or TEL, transcription factor like protein, effector proteins. So this was the case. Now coming to how UPA box was found. So basically what they did, initially they infected the cells, uh, and what happened, they
Ma'am,
after, yes.
ma'am, there is a certain lag in, like, your voice is coming before, but we can see the things later.
Oh, okay,
So if you can just go a bit slow.
fine.
Yeah.
So now we are talking about transcription factor. So this transcription factor, after entering into the plant nucleus, it regulates a protein. Basically, it upregulates a certain kind of protein. And what was found, that basically UPA box, we will come to it in UPA box. UPA stands for upregulated by avirulence BS3. So that means the short form contains U, P, and A. So this is the short form, upregulated by avirulence gene. So basically this was the direct target was found by footprinting assays and other assays. We will come to it, right? So in the cells, basically once you transfect your transcription factor, then you see what are the genes which are getting upregulated. So one of the gene was auxin, and another gene was your alpha expansin. So they control your cell enlargement. Okay. Now, let's come to the conclusion of our lecture 14. So far, we have seen tail, that is transcription activation like effectors, that has nuclear localization signal, and acidic activation domain. This is the peculiar motifs of eukaryotic motifs, that is peculiar about eukaryote. It was found to function in plants by Gus reporter assays we have shown. Then mutational studies showed that both NLS and activation domain are critical for your avirulence activity. Then you have some kind of transposon like gene transfer. That means you have left and right repeats, and these were inverted repeats as conserved as 64. That means there is a horizontal gene transfer that can happen with this. Now it targets UPA gene by binding to specific conserved sequences of UPA boxes. So now I will open this for questions. If you have questions so far in both lectures 13 and 14, you can ask. Any questions? Okay, maybe then I will continue further for maybe 15 to 20 minutes so that we finish little longer, and at a time we can finish tail, so that we have more time for interaction and more time for question and answer session, so that you can go read about this, and if you do not understand you can come and ask questions again. So moving further. Now, coming to genes like upregulated AVR genes. So how these genes were isolated? basically what are the direct targets of this AVR. So basically they did some kind of experiments where they infected Xanthomonas or other strains carrying this avirulence gene, and then they started isolating cDNA from these upregulated genes. So once you infect some kind of protein or pathogen, it is natural that plant immunity will, have some kind of role to play. So in that sense, you will see what are the genes which are upregulated, downregulated. So all those things will be there in your cDNA. That means complementary DNA fragments. They started isolating this complementary cDNA, and they did two different kind of assay. One is reverse transcription polymerase chain reaction, and another is another analysis where they did hybridization kind of assays. So with these kind of assays, they were able to find that cDNA for UPF20 that has prominent helix, the loop helix motifs, was a putative transcription factor. So that means you are, AVR is binding to some kind of or it is upregulating transcription factor that can bind directly to some kind of promoter sequences. So now how to address this? So the role of UPA20 was people started to find out the role of UPA20 because it was one of the target and direct target of AVR genes. So they did in this essay what they did, they used GFP, siRNA against GFP here, and they here what they did, they used siRNA against your UPA20. That means you are silencing this protein UPA20. Okay, and since this is the direct target of AVRBS3, that means if you are silencing this thing, and that means you are not creating any hypersensitive response. This is blocked. So here this is the same experiment showing siRNA GFP causes hypersensitive response when you are injecting your UPF20, UPA20, and if you are injecting this here or silencing this, this is not giving your hypersensitive response. So this was the first indication that UPA is a direct target of AVR gene. So now further, what they did again, they have certain kind of mutation. So basically what you see here in figure A, so this is UPA20 gene where you have exon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then you have intronic region. And basically secondary motifs showed that it has helix, loop, helix kind of motifs. So helix is shown here. So first helix is shown here, loop is shown with the pink color, and again second helix is shown in the green color. So this is the polar region or conserved region, and especially they started mutating some amino acid in this case, and then they transfected it or infected into the leaf. So basically if you infect the wild type, I will say this as a wild type, this as a mutant, and this as a helix mutant. Okay. So once they started injecting into the plant, what you see here, GFP was taken as a control because again GFP it should not give any response. UPA20 direct injection caused your hypersensitive response as you can see here in 2. Then mutant did not give any hypersensitive response, and second mutant in the helix region also did not give any response, hypersensitive response. That means this is the direct, so one is, so two things here is to understand. So one is your AVRBS3. We are taking this as in a first our example. If you infect this, or Xanthomonas has this effector protein. So this effector protein, if it is injected on the leaf or infected in the leaf, leaf will give you hypersensitive response. But since UPA20 is a direct target and they have found it by other experiments, so this UPA20 is also, if you infect in the plant leaf, then it is also directly giving you hypersensitive response. So that has been shown here. When UPA20 is infected on the plant leaf, this portion gives you hypersensitive response. Whereas if you mutate this region, important region here, loop or helix, or here helix and other sequences, then this response is deleted, or it's not there anymore. So then they started wondering whether there are other genes which are also direct targets of AVR, and whether we are able to find out. So as you can see that after you have cDNA, after you infect all the plants, then you take out these and check what are the other genes which are upregulated in these sequences. So once this is our control, so in control, if you can see, there are two kind of thing. EF1 alpha, this is the basal gene which has been taken for normalization or for normalization. So this is RT-PCR normalization, and once you see GFP, there was another one protein called UPA7. So that was giving very much prominent response only when AVR-BS3 was infected, or when wild type UPA20 was infected into the plant. So in these cases, you have post one day infection, or this is days post infection. So this is one day or after 2 days. So mutant did not show any infection. Here also the mutant did not show any upregulation in UPA7 gene. So in this way, they are able to find the other genes which were upregulated upon transfecting of UPA20 or AVR genes. So there was visible hypertrophy caused by AVR gene targeting UPA20, and they were also able to find UPA7. Now, after this, they were able to see what are the prominent promoter regions of the AVR-BS3. So as I mentioned earlier also, for promoter region, what you do kind of deletion assays, and also you take this to for reporter system. So in this kind of system, you have Gus reporter system, and then you have promoter region upstream of this. So if Gus is expressed, that means you can see whether if blue is present, that means your promoter region is present. If blue signal is not coming, that means your promoter region is absent in this case. So what they did here, the AVR sequences, promoter sequences, they started deleting from both the ends, as you can see here, and especially the 55 base pair. So what you see here, the 55 base pair was the minimal responsive region what they were able to find here. So this is what is containing the minimal responsive region. As you can see here, 55 is the minimum. All other also had the activity, but the minimal portion was your 55 base pair. So with this, so in fact, I want to point out here. So if you delete up to 120 base pair, F3R0, which is going further from this direction till here, then you lose the promoter activity, and it is shown in this case. So here you do not have any activity. That means they are able to define the sequences which are giving you the responsive. Minus 42 to minus 96 was the prominent sequence of promoter region that was able to bind by AVR BS3. So this is what. Now, how will you check whether your UPA, this promoter is able to bind to the effector region? So earlier we have seen similar experiments like transcription factor. So imagine your effector. So AVR-BS3 is your effector protein, that is the transcription factor. It is binding to your promoter region. So if you want to show this kind of experiments, you can very well use the footprinting assays, and people have used footprinting assays on this system. I've not shown it here because there are other also techniques. For example, here chromatin immunoprecipitation assays, which shows whether DNA is binding to your protein of interest or not. So what they did here, So what is chromatin immunoprecipitation? So basically, you know that DNA is wrapped under histones, and you have a prominent figure of histones. And now you want to find out in this kind of scenario whether your protein is bound to certain sequences or not. So the idea from chromatin or chip, in short, people say it. So what they do here, they fragment the complete genomic DNA. For example, you isolate genomic DNA and you fragment it by sonication or by other methods, so that you get very shorter fragments of chromatin DNA. So that means your histones are wrapped around, and there are other proteins also which are wrapped around your DNA fragments. So basically, your first step, that is your fragmentation of your chromatin, should be proper, so that you get properly chopped fragments of your chromatin region. So now imagine, now you want to isolate your protein of interest. In our case, we want to isolate whether ABRBS3, which is, effector, whether it is binding to certain kind of DNA, whether it is present or not. So for example, here, whether it is binding to UPA box or not. So what you can do, you can create an antibody which is binding to your protein or effector protein here, BS3, and then you can apply, or you can take all these fragments and then incubate it with your antibody. So this is together with your antibody, it will incubate. And uh, wherever you have this protein AVR bound, it will bind, your antibody will bind. And for example, if you have certain sequences which is binding to AVR, and wherever you do not have that certain proteins, it will not bind. So that means your antibody also needs to be very good in this case. If you want to do an chip analysis, your antibody should be of very high quality. So once you have the antibody, you can precipitate all the proteins which are binding to your chromatin, and that means it will carry further your protein, AVR protein, and then your chromatin region also. So that means you are bringing down the chromatin portion. Now with the DNA isolation method, you can separate your protein of interest, that not protein of interest, separate your proteins which are bound here, that means histones and AVR and other antibodies will be separated with the help of centrifugation, and what you are left with your genomic DNA. This genomic DNA now will be analyzed whether this, what kind of portion is there inside this. So basically, if you want to find out whether your promoter region is present or not, then you create a primer which is carrying forward and reverse direction. For example, in our case, this is UPA box. We want to find out the sequences which is present in UPA box is present in this case. For example, if you can see that this is the UPA box. Okay. So and we want to find out whether UPA box is present here or not. This is case 1, and this is section 2 where another fragment is present. This is unassociated fragment. So this fragment is also coming down after this, and we want to create a primer. So forward primer and reverse primer is created. For this also we create a different primer, forward and reverse primer. So now you want to amplify this a number of times and see whether these regions are present or not. Okay, so what you see is before IP, that means without an AIP, both regions are present. This is used as a control. That means your input is correct. So that means you have UPA signal here, as well as you have this fragment is also present in this case in 2 number. Okay, plus minus means the plant was infected with T3SS system. That means it has been infected into the NLS sequence, and without means it is not infecting. That is why it is saying negative. So all those input is there, and this is the number of cycles. So here after forward and reverse direction you do PCR, and in the PCR you will amplify the genes. So here what you see, after 38 cycle you get certain sequences which are significant for UPA box, whereas after 40 cycles it is prominent in this case, whereas negative is without any transfection, and this is negative. And for the second region, even after 38 cycles or 40 cycles or even 42 cycles, you do not see any specific amplification of this region. This kind of assay, with the chip assay, you can actually say that your protein of interest is binding to your DNA or not. Okay, so with chip assay, they were able to show that UPA box was the place where your AVR gene is binding, and especially after 40 cycles, you see a prominent effect. Now, this binding, chip assay has a, pro and cons. So pro is like you can do it in endogenous form, like you can actually take leaf and then do this assay. But negative side is like it cannot give you whether it is a direct binding or not, because antibody can link to your protein, but if there is any very close contact with that protein like AVRBS3 protein, and then it is binding to UPF3A box, then we don't know whether this is a direct target or it is an indirect target. Now the objective for them was to check whether these are the really direct targets or it is indirect. So for direct targets, we have also seen previously that some kind of EMSA were used, right? So EMSA is a very effective technique where you can show in vitro assay that if you have a purified proteins, and if you give either P30 labeled fragments, oligonucleotide fragments, or you have biotin labeled, some kind of labeled fragments. So what they did, they actually labeled here their UPA box oligonucleotide with biotin. And second, they purified proteins. First, they have only purified GST. Second, they have purified the tagged GST with your AVR BS3 proteins. And now with this protein, they are able to check whether in the presence of, biotin labeled fragment, they are able to form a complex or not. So what you see here in lane, I will say lane 1 and 2, you do not see any complex formation in this here, whereas increasing amount of GST BS3 purified protein, you see there is an increasing amount of protein DNA formation. So protein DNA complex is forming. So what is you see here is this case. And as I mentioned earlier also, so in this kind of assay, you can also do competitions. So basically, this is the competitor DNA. So what they used as a competition here is the same UPA oligonucleotide, which was not labeled with biotin. So there is no labeling. And when you incubate such oligonucleotide, then you see a decrease in your labeling pattern, what you see here. And similarly, when this oligonucleotide were mutated in between, for example, you have certain sequences. If these sequences are mutated in between, that means UBM, certain sequences were mutated, then you have less competition compared to your wild type oligonucleotides. So with this kind of assays, they were able to say that you are this AVR BS3 effector proteins were able to bind your UPA box. So this was the total gist of this protein. So how the UPA is found, that we have seen in this case, and where UPA box, how your effector protein is going and binding to your direct target with the help of chip assay and with the help of EMSA assay, we are able to see this. Now, immediately after finding whether that this is binding directly to UPA box, there were two groups which were very pro in finding out the coding. What is the code that how it is binding to your target sequences? So the first paper by James Bose and from the Ula Bonas group. Actually, a lot of work came from this group only, Bonas. Even the review article, which I will share with you, was written by Bonas. And his group was the first to break the code of DNA binding specificity of tail type 3 effectors. Because so far we were not able to see, we know that repeat sequences are important. We know that these are the sequences, tail sequences are important, but we don't know that how exactly one-to-one binding is happening, like whether repeats are important or which are the bases which are making contact, similar like your zinc finger domains. When we started looking, so we didn't know whether repeats had any effects or not, and only after structural sequences we were able to see that -1, 2, 3 and 6 amino acids were making a direct contact with the bases. Here also repeats are important, and these assays, chip assays as well as EMSA assays shows that it is a direct binding between a promoter sequence and the transcription factor binding. But what kind of base pairs are making contact with that? That only came after these two publications, one from Bona's group and second from your Bogan. So these two papers were very different in approach. For example, in Moscow et al. Or this group, they were basically bioinformatics studies, and from that they were able to show what are the general binding pattern, whereas from Bona's group it was totally experimental studies. And what they actually was common in both of them was actually observation. So in science, actually observation is the key thing, whether you are able to keenly or in detail you are observe the differences between or sometimes you have pre-notion and that you find some, you want to find some answers, and if it is not expected to your result, you throw that result in dustbin. But sometimes you have to really look careful that what that result mean. So here the observation from both the groups was that the length of the UPA box r- roughly equals to your number of AVR repeats. For example, if you have seen this one, so consider this is AVR BS3 repeats. So we have seen that this repeats has almost 17.5 repeats, right? So it is also mentioned here 17.5. And what was observed that UPA box, so imagine this is UPA box and these are the UPA genes which are upregulated. So this UPA box which are directly bound by AVR effector proteins. So basically the repeats which are coming from individual repeats here, the number of repeats, for example 17.5, and the box number of bases in boxes were almost similar. If it is 17.5, then it will have around 18 to 19 base pair in your boxes. So this kind of observation was there from both the groups, and they prominently established for a model that one repeat is basically contacting with one DNA here. So I will come to it how they established it. So what they are saying that every 12th and for example this is having 34 amino acid. So from here 12 and 13 is carrying your first at one, and from second repeat there will be 12th and 13 which will be contacting your second base pair, and from third 12 and 13. So similarly, so 17.5, they have these repeats, they are contacting one to one base pairs. So this was their observation and they proved it in the paper. So the specificity of each repeat is determined by your diamino acid motif, that is HD, NG, HD for cytosine, NG for thymine, adenine, similarly these cases. So what they did here in the Bolas paper, they did one by one. Manually they uh, checked for UPA boxes and then they checked for AVR genes. So here they did everything manually and some kind of programs by saying that which are the prominent genes. So based on this experiment, next what they took, uh, because the code was released, just a minute. So since the code was released, then they used this target DNA specificity of other tail effectors and then predicted their boxes. So basically, since so this is the one example where the repeat sequences was uh, more, and there were more amino acid in the repeat sequences. So based on this experiment, AVR, they already know the repeat and they already know the boxes. Now they wanted to find out all the promoter region for other genes also. So they took the advantage of sequencing. They sequenced and they were able to find out the repeats, and from the repeats they predicted their sequences here based on that. So here what you have, 1, 2, and 3 different kind of HAX4 and their prominent promoter sequences or promoter boxes, what is shown here. So we'll see what kind of experiments they have done. Again, they used GUS reporter system. So here you have some kind of remote promoter region, and on top of that you have what you say, cloned your hex box, and downstream you have glucuronidase days, again this gus kind of experiment, and then this is the control where you have 35 as a control. So in this essay, what they did, they took a plant and especially leaf, and they infected it with the two different kind of plasmids. So one plasmid carried your promoter reporter gene. That means promoter plus box and then incubated with your gus gene. So this is one infection, and the second plasmid they infected was your effector gene. That means all this either hex2 or hex3, hex4, these kind of effector genes they transfected. So after transfecting, they actually checked out which one of these effectors are binding to your promoter sequences. So with this kind of again assay, they did gus activity was only seen in the corresponding effectors only. For example, if this leaf was infected with hex2 box and all different effectors, so only leaf infected with hex2 effector were able to give your blue signal for hex2 gene. No other effectors were able to give you any signal in this case. Similarly, for hex3 only gave signals for hex3 promoter region. So this was important study for them, that hex4 was elicited only in the case of hex4 promoter. So there was a corresponding elicitor or effector which is binding to your promoter, and then only you have expression of gus gene. So this was done, and this is also positive for 35 where it is infected in this case. So this kind of assay proved that you have a direct binding to that promoter region, and specificity is created by that. Okay. Now, which of the amino or which of the base pair is important for 12th and 13th? So 12th and 13 makes this di repeats, as you can see here. For each repeats, only the di amino acid is shown here. So in case of knowing whether Ng only binds to T or it can also bind to A, C or G at this position, they wanted to create mutations. And here, if they created mutations instead of hex4 box with T, if they replaced it T with A, or if they replaced a T with C or G, it did not give any reported gene activation in this case. Similarly here, for HD, it prominently binds to C, but if the C was replaced to A, G or T, it did not give any of the signal. And similarly, Ni prominently binds to A, and similarly it did not give any signal for any other base pair. However, one important thing here, this is the non-specificity of NS. So basically, if you see NS binds to A, but if NS was changed to either C, G or T, it did not affect it anyone. And in all the cases, actually it gave the positive signal. That means NS direpeats can bind to either A, it can also bind to C, and it can also bind to G, and it can also bind to T. But all other repeats can be bound to any other basis. So now if you see whether you can use this system or not. So now you have very simple code. For example, only the 12th and 13th position of amino acid is important for binding to your one base pair in the DNA. So coming to the what we have seen so far in UPA box, UPA box was found to be one base pair longer than ABR BS3 repeats. I have not shown that here, but if you see closely, I'll come to it again later. So all the UPA box, for example, 17.5, so it talks about this one. So there was one base pair longer, if you can see here, UPA box was, it always started with T, and it is one base pair longer than your amino acid repeats. So this is what it is also there in HAX1. So it always starts with T, and it is one base pair longer than your this one. So T is conserved at fifth position, fifth prime end, and that was repeated as 0. This was positioned as 0, and there is a very simple code. One repeat, one base pair. That means Ni is caused for A, Ng for T, Nd for C, and Nn, Nk, Nh, they all defines for G. So there are some kind of redundancy also. For example, Ns, they can bind to either A, C, G or T. It can bind to all of our. And similarly, Nn, Nk, Nh, they can all bind to G portion. So that means it is simple to create any artificial you know, and then you are able to create any artificial effectors that can directly go and bind to your promoter region of interest. So people use this system highly effectively in their assays. Okay. So is this fine for today? I will start with the structure tomorrow probably, because this is completely different sequence. So what so far we have seen? We have seen how AVR is important. That means what is the role of effector system? Okay, it evades your, first of all, it evades your pattern triggered immunity. Then we have seen the effector structural domains. So that means it has repeats. We have seen it has NLS, and we have seen it has acidic domains in terminals. So all these were actually checked, characterized by deletion and swapping experiments, and was found that these repeats are important, LNS are important, and ADD is important for hypersensitive response. Then it was found that once it is inside the plant, when it is infected in the plant, certain genes are upregulated, and these were defined as UPA genes. So these are upregulated genes, and of UPA genes, some of the direct targets of UPA genes, for example, UPA20, UPA7, they were found as to be a direct targets of these effector proteins. Okay, so once they found the direct targets, immediately people started looking it into closely, and they found that whenever you have a direct target, their promoter region is almost similar to the repeats with which it is targeted. For example, effector proteins repeats and its UPA box, the sequences were almost similar. So if this is 17.5, then there will be around 18 to 19 base pair in the UPA box. So this was the closeness, and from there they were able to find out that the repeats, especially 12th and 13th dinucleotide, were important in defining that which of the position of the box it is placing. For example, first repeat will bind to the first UPA box, then especially at 0 position there is always T. In next lecture we'll see that it is why it is always T. Then in first you have certain sequences based on the first repeat 12th and 13th position. Based on the second repeat 12th and 13th position there is a second base pair binding, and so on and so on. So this was defined through computational and through experimental assays, and also which dinucleotides binds to which base pair was defined. So for example, one base pair binds to only one dinucleotide in the 12th and 13th position. So this became much simpler compared to your zinc finger proteins. This type of code where you only have to decide about two amino acid and rest everything remains similar, that means you are much betterly plan your experiment, plan your protein, and plan your DNA binding kind of assays, and then you create your artificial effectors with your novel targets. That means whatever DNA sequences you want to target, you can prepare that kind of protein, and then you can allow your protein to be infected into the system and then target that kind of protein. So with this I close my lecture here, and this is now open for question. If you want to ask, you can ask. Is this clear first of all? Can anybody respond? Is this clear?
Hello.
Yes, Tirthan.
Parts of them are a little hazy right now, but it'll probably be clear after we go through it once.
Okay. Okay. So basically transcription factor and how it is binding we have seen in if I describe it in a very broader way. So we have seen transcription factor coming from the Xanthomonas system. So whenever it infects as a effector, so you can talk it transcription like, that is why it is said as a transcription activator like effectors because it is affecting some of the proteins here, and these proteins are turned as a UPA genes or UPA proteins, or UPA, if there is a gene then that has a promoter. So that means UPA genes are upregulated upon infection by Xanthomonas, and these proteins goes, that means your effector proteins goes into the nucleus, binds to your UPA boxes, and then you have release of this gene or upregulation of these proteins. And the binding is very, very simple because you have this repeat sequences, and the repeat sequences in the effector defines the specificity of binding, because all the 12th and 13th amino acid which are there in the repeats, that is only defining your one-to-one base pair contacts. For example, 12th and 13th, if it is Ni in the 12th and 13th position, that means it will only bind to adenine, and if it is Ng in the 12th position, that means it will only bind to thymine, and if it is HD in the sequence, it will only bind to cytosine, and so on. So that means whatever sequence you have now, for example, I want to target one sequence that has AATCGG, something like that. Then I can create one kind of protein which will have in 12th and 13th position Ni, first repeat, second repeat I can have again Ni, third repeat I can have Ng, then in fourth repeat I can have HD, fifth repeat I can have NN, and then NH, and something like that. So that means I am able now to create my own repeats in the section that will be able to target this sequence, right? So now I have a novel way of targeting one protein which I have created artificially, and that will target a gene of interest for me, right? So you can define any sequence within the gene, and then you can try whether you are able to create a repeat with the for that kind of sequence. Yes, Somik, you had something.
Then we have to go through this lecture first. Then we'll
Okay.
add question.
Okay, fine. All right, what I will do, I will upload all the reading material, especially the portion which I have consulted here was one review article and many research papers. But I guess if I send you the review article, that would be best, because and or even my notes, because notes are much conciser. Because if you go through the paper, although I will upload all the original papers as well, because there might be some students who want to actually look into the details also. So that way I will also upload the original papers. Okay. And the notes which will give you a gist of the whole experiment and the whole content of the slides. Okay, with this, maybe we'll meet tomorrow, and tomorrow we will finish this transcription activator like effectors, the whole thing. So that means tomorrow only the part where you have the structural thing. We will talk on the structures, and then we will start our new topic, which is very exciting also. And we'll see how it was originated, and then how this current scenario is there in the CRISPR situation. Okay. All right. Thank you all.